Hi everyone, this is Andrew at Plainview Farm, and due to the reaction to a recent video that I posted about starting your own small-scale farm or homestead, I thought it might be a good idea to talk about a few things that I use to keep my mind focused on what I'm doing in order to find success in my own operation. Now, I understand that there are folks out there that are pretty good at flying by the seat of their pants, so to speak. They are good at thinking on the fly, coming up with ideas, and just implementing them in short order. I am generally not one of those people. I'm the kind of person that requires some planning if I'm going to find success. So if you're starting a new business and you're going out looking for investors, or you're even going to the bank trying to find a loan, chances are that you're going to be asked to produce a very specific document, which is a business plan. Now, for those of you that don't know, a business plan is basically a roadmap of what your organization, what your business is going to be, what it's going to do. The overall goals are stated in that, and you give an idea about how you're going to reach those goals. Now, while I don't have a specific business plan necessarily for my farm, I do have stated goals based on an overarching philosophy of how I want to conduct myself and how I want to conduct the operation. For those of you who may not know, my farm is a 20-acre direct-to-consumer farm. We sell pork, we sell beef, we have chickens, and we raise eggs. All of those, I guess you'd say, traditional type things that you might find on this type of farm. We also raise meat goats that we don't sell at a local market. We sell them at a local sale barn. I guess that is a local market. But those goats are not a direct-to-consumer product that we raise here on the farm. They're mainly for brush control. And the overall philosophy that we have here is that we want to do these things in a way that works with nature, that it helps to build soil, helps to build fertility, and put us in a position where we will leave the farm better than we found it. A popular description for that these days is regenerative agriculture or regenerative farming. So in order for us to implement those things, what we have to do is we have to have some long-term stated goals, okay? So one of the long-term stated goals is to improve the quality of our pastures. Now, of course, this is late in the fall, it's almost winter, but you can see there's a lot of broom sedge, there's a lot of stubble from different weeds and different brushy type plants growing in our pasture. So in order to get to where we want to go, we have to deal with some of those problems, I guess you'd say, in our pasture. One way we're doing that is by using goats to help keep some of the brush down, to eat the browse, those things that are out there in the field. We also, about a year ago, we put 2.5 tons per acre of lime on our pasture to try to bring the soil pH up back into balance. In previous years, whenever it comes time to start feeding hay, we have rolled our hay out onto the pastures to try to build some soil fertility that way. Now, one of the changes we're making this year is we're going to start feeding our hay in the same location time and time again, so that we can build up a large compost pile that can then be spread out onto the pastures in the spring. So now, in all of that, if you break it down, what you have are goals on multiple levels. So we have that long-term goal, again, which is to improve the quality of our pastures so that we can, in an ecological manner, improve our productivity. We also have short-term and intermediate goals, which help us to get to that long-range goal. For instance, one of the intermediate goals is to be able to spread manure, compost back out on the pastures in the spring or later on next year. In order to accomplish that, we've had to make some short-term goals, and some of those short-term goals are to spread out wood chips as a base for the area that we're going to feed our hay. That way it can help collect the manure and those kinds of things that the cows do as they eat the hay. I've also found an old manure spreader that I plan to refurbish over the winter so that I can use it whenever the time comes to actually spread the manure onto the fields. And I also bought hay to feed back earlier in the year, knowing, of course, that I was going to have to feed hay to my cattle. Now, as I said before, I know there's a lot of people out there that basically they can keep all of this in their head, they know what they want to do, and so they just do it. But if you're like me, having an actual written plan with all of the steps laid out of how to get there, it forces you to do something very important, which is to set priorities. Now, I can be one of the world's worst at getting distracted and having my attention pulled away from the things that I should actually be focused on. So if I put together a checklist, or as I said, a roadmap to where I'm trying to go, then what I can do is I can say, okay, well, so as we begin this month, well, these things here, number 1, 2, and 3, all right, we can rank them in order of their importance, and that forces me to make sure that the things that have to get done are getting done in a timely manner, so that once I reach those intermediate points that are set out there further down the road, I'm not scrambling trying to play catch up. And now here's another example. Let's say that you've got a small scale farm or homestead, or kind of like mine, you're trying to build a direct to consumer operation, and you're looking at joining a local farmer's market in the near future. One of the things you need to do is, number one, figure out how much it's going to cost you in dues to join the local farmer's market. You need to figure out what things sell at the local farmer's market, and you can go and you can talk to the folks there, you can talk to the market manager and kind of get an idea about things that are lacking, things that maybe they have too much of, and it gives you an idea about what kind of goals you need to set going forward. Because let me tell you this, it can be very, very discouraging whenever you start a new venture and you're trying to sell something, and then you find out that the market is flooded with what you're trying to sell, or maybe you're priced out, you can't do things for what other people are doing them, and so you're kind of priced out of the marketplace. And another problem you can potentially run into is that you don't have enough to actually sell whenever you go into the farmer's market. Everyone wants to sell out whenever they set up their booth, but nobody wants to sell out an hour or two into the market whenever you have a 4 or 5 hour day. So again, planning is key, not only to the short-term goals that you set, but also for the long-term goals that you set. And that brings me to the next point, which is you have to have some patience. Most things in life, especially farming, take time to develop. Chances are that if you're starting a new small-scale farm or homestead, that you're going to want to run out there and do all kinds of things. You're going to have really big plans, and you're going to want cows and pigs and chickens and donkeys and goats and sheep and whatever else it may be. Maybe you're planning to raise vegetables and you think, well, I'm going to build a whole bunch of high tunnels and be able to farm all the way through the winter and have fresh vegetables at the farmer's market when nobody else does. Now, those are all really great things, but as I was saying, it takes time to get your sea legs. Chances are that if you jump in with both feet before you're ready, what you're going to end up doing is setting yourself up for failure. You're going to quickly discover that none of this stuff is really all that fun at all, because you're going to learn a lot of hard lessons all at once. And the truth of the matter is, if you have to learn hard lessons, which most of us have to learn hard lessons no matter what it is we're doing, if it's something new, it's much easier to handle those hard lessons one at a time. So as I was saying just a moment ago about those long-range goals and those intermediate goals, you have to allow time for things to develop. For instance, whenever I first purchased this piece of property, there were trees all over it. And whenever I say trees, I don't mean the kind of trees that are desirable. I'm talking about weed trees. There were Bradford pears, there were thorn trees, there were a lot of cedar trees, those kinds of things just all over the place. And if you know much about that, that tells you that you've got some soil problems. I also had a lot of old broken down fences that didn't do a very good job of keeping animals in. One of the first things I did was call my brother up, because he has cattle, and I asked him if he had a group of calves that he was trying to wean or feed out that maybe he could bring over here, and we could turn them out and let them eat everything down. That way it would be easier for me to get in and start cleaning things up. So that's exactly what he did. He brought over a group of heifers, and we turned them out into the pasture, and they were here for a few days, and then I got a phone call one day while I was at work. And the phone call was from the airport over here. If you don't know why this is called Plainview Farm, it's because there's an airport right behind the property. So whenever I got this phone call, it was from the manager at the airport, who asked me, "Are you the guy fixing up that old house and trying to whip that farm into shape?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me." And he said, "Well, are you missing some cows?" And at that moment, my heart sank, because all of those heifers that my brother had brought over here were out on the airport. My brother's job requires him to travel. He wasn't here, so I had to leave work and I had to come over here and try all by myself to get those cows back on to the side of the fence that they were supposed to be on and get them out of the airport property, because there's planes that come in and out of there. Now, that very obviously could have ended in disaster. Fortunately, it didn't. But the point is that I got a little ways ahead of myself. I didn't go out and make sure that the fences would hold the animals like they needed to. And frankly, that's because in some spots I couldn't even get to the fence. And it ended up coming back around to haunt me. So as I was saying, you have to give yourself time for things to develop, because whenever we don't, we end up putting ourselves in a difficult situation that we really don't want to be in. I've been on this farm now for 5 years almost, and from the time that I started to the point that I am today, it feels like it's been a long time, but in reality, it's gone by fairly quickly. All of the little things that I've done to get to where I am, I had to force myself to wait, to be patient, and to let things follow the natural process. And patience is definitely important if you don't have a lot of money and you plan to do a lot of things yourself. And that brings me to the last point, which is you have to be pragmatic or realistic about what you're trying to do. Sometimes you just have to be willing to admit to yourself that you can't do everything on your own. There is absolutely no shame in not being 100% self-sufficient. I understand that there are a lot of people out there today that think that it's all about self-sufficiency and all about being able to do everything all in one place right where you are and never having to rely on anyone else for anything. The truth is that sometimes it doesn't make much sense to do things that you're not very good at. For instance, if you can't weld very good, and that's something that you don't need a whole lot of, maybe it's not a good idea to go out and invest a lot of money and time in equipment and learning a new skill. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to be learning new skills, but what I'm saying is, if it is something that doesn't make sense right now, you probably should maybe hire the job done. For me, I have to remember that I'm trying to build a farm business that actually makes money. So if I'm sinking a whole lot of resources and energy into things that aren't producing a profit or aren't helping me to produce a profit in the short term, then it's probably something that I need to avoid right now. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not a good idea to learn new skills or to try to build up to a point that you can do more for yourself. But again, if it's not absolutely necessary in the moment, chances are you don't need it. One example I have of the pragmatism that I try to use is I have right here a 1948 Farmall M tractor that has a loader on it. Earlier on, I had a much newer tractor that was much more expensive. Now, once that newer tractor served its purpose on the farm, I got rid of it and I replaced it with this because I had a great deal of capital invested in that newer tractor and I really didn't need it in order to accomplish what I needed to accomplish, which is primarily feeding hay and maybe moving a little bit of dirt around here and there. And if I bought square bales, honestly, I probably wouldn't need this tractor at all. But at what I paid for it, it's a whole lot easier for me to justify having it than it is if, again, I were to go out and buy a much newer machine. The same is true for my truck, which is a half-ton Chevrolet pickup, and my 1970s model stock trailer that I think I only have about $100 in. The point is, the farther away you get from being realistic or pragmatic about what it actually takes to be successful, the harder it is to find success. I know, that's a shocker, isn't it? And let's be honest, the smaller your operation is, the truer these things are because you have much less room for error. So if you found this video to be useful, I hope you would do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you want to know more about small-scale farming,